Musanete Farai Sakupwanya. Translation: never grow weary taking great pleasure out of breaking things down. Which is exactly what happened when we hung out with this jazz vocalist, an artist with a penchant for theater, a religious journeyman with a story as powerful as his voice and his round kick. As soon as I got to know Musa, I remember telling Chilu about him, and both of us agreed this is a voice worth sharing. So, here it is. Farai, enjoy. Welcome back to Key Africans Unlocked. How you doing, Chilu?
I'm doing great, man. Never been better.
That's good, that's good. You know what's odd, man, is the last time we were here, it felt like we were back.
Yeah.
And it felt like we'd been on a break. Today just feels like we've been going, man.
Yeah.
I don't get the sense that I'm back from a break at this point.
Yeah, and I think, it's a rhythm of life. So, yeah.
But you had a good week, you good?
Week's been good. Week's been awesome. What's interesting about weeks and days is when you wake up and there's like a bunch of challenges. Mm-hmm. And then by the time you shut your eyes to sleep, like you've knocked a few of them down and you have less challenges. Then you wake up to tackle the next ones. But when you wake up, there are more challenges. And then it's a cycle, but we're winning. So that's what's important. Winning.
My week was fantastic. Thanks for asking, Chilu.
Welcome.
Our guest today is a dude that I met very recently, actually, less than a month ago. A common friend of ours, like a mutual friend. Her name is Sammy. We should probably have her on this show as well, because I think she'll be an interesting person to talk to. She put together a beautiful theatrical production with the Joburg Ballet. And she asked me to be on board. Of course, I said yes. And I was introduced to some of the most amazing creatives. Just the ballerinas were incredible themselves. But then I met this guy right here, Musanete.
Hey, everyone.
Musa, how was Sammy pronouncing your surname? Do you remember when we were on stage?
It just wasn't working half the time. But she can say it now.
Oh. What did she say now?
How do you Sakupwanya.
No, she wasn't.
What's your surname?
Sakupwanya.
Sakupwanya.
Mm-hmm.
Kupwanya in Zambia is like to break something.
It's the same in
It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's a very destructive surname.
So why?
My full name is Musanete Farai Sakupwanya. So if you put it all together, it's don't get tired, be happy, destroying things. It's awesome. I think it's a great name.
That is exactly what your name means, bro. Musanete Farai
Sakupwanya.
Yep. Names are amazing. So I met Musa and I was amazed at the voice that he had, bro. This guy's voice is incredible. Now,
so I've been told, yeah.
Okay, you about to drop a little something?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm not
go ahead. You look like you're about to
dropping my voice. I'm just dropping my voice.
Dropping the register.
Just dropping
as
my voice.
we do.
Because y'all are voice artists too, so it's like I gotta keep up.
No, but you're
I'm gonna soft sell this whole podcast.
You're gonna Barry White it. What I'm amused by is I thought you guys knew each other because of the way you connect. I thought you guys had a long history. I thought you were gonna say we went to school together.
I felt when I met him.
We really got along immediately. And the thing is, Sam every time she talked about Zubs was like, Musa, you're gonna love Zubs. He's like you're just gonna get along so well. I know it. And I'm just thinking like, Sam, she gets really excited about stuff, and you're just like, okay, Sam, yeah, sure thing, Sam. And I met Zubs, and it was like, bruh, this is my brother.
Right. Dude, as soon as we met, it was like we'd known each other forever.
We were like,
bro.
yo,
I'm
it was
impressed.
crazy.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah, and throughout that entire sort of production, rehearsals, the weeks of everything, preparation, we were just like this, Wow. And I knew instantly that I needed to have him on the pod after I found out that he wasn't just an incredible voice, this dude, right? And I'm telling you, his voice is phenomenal, right? But he's a Taekwondo second Dan, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
Second Dan basically means,
My
the
man.
belts. You go through the belts until you get to what, like
you get to black first.
black belt.
Yeah, from
right?
white to
after you get to
yellow,
black
whatever,
belt, there's another level. And that's the Dan levels. He's on, what Dan are you on?
Second Dan.
And how long have you been at this thing?
It's 5 years now. 6
Really?
years.
In
6
5 years.
I thought you were
this
gonna say
guy-
since you were a kid.
Nah.
Dude, that's what I had thought.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing theater and stage?
Theater actually, I used to do it in high school.
Yeah.
And then I went to varsity to sing. but theater actually literally started last year.
Isn't that crazy? And now he's traveling the world doing lead roles already, right? So that's another thing. So Taekwondo, he's laced it, he's killed it, highest level. He does theater, he laces, he kills it, highest level.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This guy is a fantastic dude. But hey, man, I just want to introduce you guys out here to Musanete Sakupwanya.
I don't know who he's talking about. Like,
Welcome to the pod, my brother.
Thank you, man. Thank
Welcome
you for
to Key
having me,
Africans
guys.
Unlocked.
Oh, this is awesome. I'm so excited. It's my first time being on a podcast that's not my own.
Oh yeah,
And
because you do your own
I
podcast.
have
Look
my
at you
own podcast.
marketing your podcast
So, like,
in the first
I haven't
sentence.
even
No, I'm
said
teasing,
the
I'm
name.
teasing.
Why would
I'm
you say
teasing,
that?
I'm
Like, I was
teasing.
actually going to keep it out of the whole thing. But I mean journeytopodcast.com. I'm just saying, so it's the first time I'm on a podcast that's not my own. And, you know, on my own podcast, I've been like, I want to do interviews and stuff, have guests and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to have this experience, being my first experience on someone else's podcast, because then I can learn from y'all's mistakes. So that
And trust me, there have been many mistakes. Just today alone.
It's okay. I can point out a few things.
Yeah, no, you should watch these. You should watch our first batch of 10.
We kill it, man. I mean, like you're looking at the process, but look at the final product. When
No,
we
no,
put
no,
the,
that's cool,
The
yeah.
sizzle on it.
Yeah, we
And then
how
when
it
we
works.
sprinkle like
Yeah,
what's
we're
his
like
name?
Salt Bay.
Salt Bay. When we put the sprinkle on the podcast.
Yeah, we're like this, but without voices. So maybe it's like,
So
Just don't tell anyone you do that with the mics. They'd never use them again.
Oh no. My first question before Zubs dives in.
Yeah.
So all these things are happening in the past few years. I mean, you're doing phenomenal things. So obviously there's a layer of stuff that sets you up to have the mindset of conquering different fields, different arenas.
Yeah.
So what can you point to which kind of helps to solidify your base so that you are this guy?
Well, I mean, growing up, I was always a performer. You know, grew up in Zim, and we had lots and lots of power cuts. You know, before there was load shedding in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, we knew about that in Zim. We just never called it load shedding, just said power cuts. But I'd always sing in front of the family, and my sister was learning piano. You know, and she was a singer. She always sang with groups in high school, and I would listen to them singing, and I would get their cassettes, you know, because they would record on cassettes back in those days. And when my sister wasn't home, I'd like play those cassettes. That's how I learned how to harmonize, you know. And then later on, I think in high school, I did drama. And then after high school, there was church. I was in Celebration Church in Zimbabwe, and they had a very strong, like, creative side. So I got into the choir there, and I was a worship leader in Celebration Church. So it was a great platform. I mean, you're standing up in front of like 3,500 people on a Sunday. So, you know, you get over the whole crowd thing very quickly. And then from there, coming to South Africa to pursue singing, I studied jazz for a while. And for a while, I just thought I'd be a jazz singer, you know. And, you know, through a few events, I realized, you know, I can't limit myself to one thing. One, it's not practical for a performer to just only have one trick unless you really dominate that trick, you know, with everyone else. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't in that position. So when I'd made a few decisions, which we might talk about, but I'd made a few decisions that made me realize I need to really not be afraid to try different things and not close off my mind to different opportunities. And let's see. I don't know if I'm good at it. But something that's happened as I've gotten older is I've gotten braver, you know? And so now I'm like, oh, I could fail at that, but let's just find out, you know? And so far, they've gone pretty well.
I have to say, I think they have gone pretty well for you. The older you get, sometimes you find that people are averse to taking risks in that way. They don't want to try new things. Yeah. They don't want to stray away from what they feel is tried and tested. If anything, they want to stick with what they know works. And then stay with that for the rest of their lives, you know? There's a huge move, I think, in the world in general, of people changing careers and professions, for example, in their 40s. People starting new families post-40, like literally divorces, remarriage, new child. Do you understand what I mean? And I think immediately of Judge Masipa, for example, who only became a judge much later in life, you know? And there's so many countless examples of people who have had the courage as they get older to say, you know what, I've been doing this 20 years, but it's time to start something brand new.
Yeah.
I heard that being on your phone.
I know, I'm
For
so
somebody
sorry.
who actually does a podcast about
I
podcasting,
am so sorry.
that is like a rookie mistake.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It happens to the best of us. So, yeah, man, I think what you're doing is very brave and courageous. Has it come at any kind of cost for you?
Yeah, I think anytime you pursue anything, there's some kind of consequence. Something I learned recently was that, beliefs have consequences. Everything has a consequence, right? So you choose something, it means you're letting go of something else. I think one of the big consequences was it's a strange one. I think a lot of time I was so used to getting a lot of validation from a certain group of people, and making these choices kind of killed off that validation, because it's like, oh, now you're doing all this other stuff. Now now you think you're gonna do this. Now you think you're gonna do that.
Right.
Now you think you are good enough to be in these places. So for a long time, I depended on a certain core group of people to validate me. And in choosing to kind of go my own way, that obviously I started losing that. And obviously that's quite difficult, especially when it's people that you've always kind
It's
of
a
looked
core
up
group.
to. But I've discovered a new core group. It's you make new relationships and you meet new people. Like I've met you, and someone that I already feel like I'm really close to. I've met you today, and I'm gonna abuse all your knowledge of the things that we've talked about before. But it's something that you have to deal with. There have been that consequence. Yeah.
What is this? There's an
That's
insect.
Chilu.
Is this me?
Is that
Zam,
Chilu?
is this you? Huh? Just drink it. Thank you for that share.
Yeah,
That's cool.
you're talking about a core group, and but I don't know too much about what you're saying, so it's hella vague.
I know.
Is it deliberate that you're
I'm
making
being
it
vague.
vague?
I was being vague a little bit, but I was like, well, I don't mind answering, just to give more clarity.
Okay, do you want to go just a level deeper?
Yeah,
just a little bit
Musa
below the
goes
surface.
all the way deep.
Guys,
This guy has no
Subs
qualms.
has found out, like, I literally do not mind
Yeah.
going.
Yeah, man. So who is this core group? Is it the EFF? No, I'm teasing. I'm teasing.
Oh my goodness! Coming from Zimbabwe and you start talking about land, it's
It's a deep
they all
thing, bro.
connect, hey? They all connect. But so for a long time, I mentioned the church I was in. I was at Celebration Church.
Yeah.
And I was actually a pastor there.
Oh, wow.
And so when I came down to South Africa and I was studying, a friend of mine and I, who came from Zim, we eventually started the church. And after a few years of actually doing it and having another pastor from Joburg mentoring us, we then became ordained pastors. And so for a long time, and that's probably like the kind of gap in my career, when other people were advancing with, their music or their acting and all that kind of stuff, I was pastoring. And for a long time I thought that, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a pastor. I'm going to be a man of God. I'm going to,
That's a vocation.
mentor
This is
people and stuff. And,
calling.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
calling.
You deal with hundreds of people. And we were on campus there at the University of Pretoria. And through events, and I'm just going to say events there, I don't think I want to go too far. Okay. But through events, I decided to step down from pastoring and also to leave Celebration Church. And that actually triggered a lot of the different choices I started to make, because it was now, wait, I don't know if I'm going to be a pastor anymore. I don't know if I want to live like that.
And
I
you've
don't
primed
know if I
yourself
want
for
to.
years.
Yeah, you've been doing this for years. Your life really belongs to other people, and suddenly I don't have those other people. I'm not beholden to them anymore. I used to make choices that would sabotage performance potential for the sake of the church, And in that time, I felt like, no, I'm doing the right thing. I'm doing this for God, man. This is great. This is cool. And then when I left that, I realized I had nothing else going on. So it was a really difficult decision to be like, okay, well, I'm a few years behind on a lot of things, because I've really just kind of given my life to this thing. And now I don't have it anymore. So, you're dealing with the whole issue of identity and everything. So that was the core group that I had for so long. You know, I was ordained in 2008. And I think I only left in 2014, you know, so it's not like that long ago. And you can see kind of coincides with how everything else started to happen afterwards. Indeed. Because I wouldn't have thought of doing theater. You know, I studied jazz. What business do I have acting? You know, but you forget because this is all you've been doing. You know?
Yeah, I find drama, there's a bit of a correlation, or the two fields are slightly related. I know a guy, for example, I used to be in drama as well at primary school.
Yeah.
And the best actor in our drama group, the guy who used to kind of be the guy who people scream for and all those things, he's now a pastor.
Yeah.
And he's doing well. I mean, he's a popular pastor, but in my mind, because of the fact that I know his history, when I see his acclaim and when I see all that stuff, I'm like, but you know, he's been good with the crowds from day one. And so, you know, it's debatable about.
There is
but I think there's a correlation.
I think so. I think
agree.
the sense of theater, the sense of being in front of a crowd and literally feeling the impact of
energy.
That. It's almost like I don't want to call it a rush because then it sounds like a drug, you know. But there's a real sense of like presence and belonging that I guess can only be compared to something like acting and stage. If you're in front of a congregation,
True.
I imagine. What I want to ask you, Musa, about that, and it's a very brave conversation you're having, and I appreciate you sharing that part of your life because it's such a real thing. Does that mean you turned your back away from God and spirituality, or did you just turn your back from a specific church, or did you turn your back from a specific type of church?
Well, I didn't turn my back on God or spirituality, and I didn't turn my back on the church as the whole. I know what definitely happened was I did change my ideas around what kind of approach to Christianity I was going to follow from that point on. And just, you know, full disclosure, I'm in a Baptist church now. Right?
Oh, wow.
So,
but for the unschooled, maybe after as you answer that question, you can also maybe share what the distinctions are between, you know.
Well, basically, what I turned my back on were certain ideologies about what it means to be a Christian and what the impact or the result of being a Christian means on your life. Is it about God making everything great for you? And is it about you becoming successful? Is it becoming rich? Is it becoming influential, becoming a dominant force in every industry that you're in, and, you know, changing the world for Jesus and that kind of thing? Which
the gospel of prosperity, I think, is what
the gospel of prosperity. Yeah, that's a very
that's what I hear them saying, like prosperity.
Yeah, it's a very specific kind of approach to God. It's basically saying Jesus died for our earthly good. Okay. That's basically what it's saying. I mean, it's the idea that because you're a Christian, you must have a better life in some way, shape, or form. You know, things must improve in a very obvious, like on this earth type of way.
By being a Christian, you have now earned the right.
Yes.
To wealth, to, you know, promotions at work, to health. You know, it's almost like it's owed to you.
Almost like that.
To have money and to have influence and to have health.
Yeah. In fact, it's like that's the calling, you know. And if you're not dominating wherever you are, you know, you need to pray harder. You need to tithe more. You know, then you get some churches that go that route of, you know, you need to give an offering for God to bring your blessing and that kind of thing. And it in the end, the gospel of prosperity is really a gospel of man, because you're the one in control. You're the one that needs to pray those prayers. You're the one that needs to bring in that money. It's like you've tied God up. And what I moved to was more a gospel of man's need for God, man's inability to reach out to God and touch God and to save himself or to even ask God. It's like God has to actually intervene because man is so broken. And it gives God the sovereignty all over again, you know, and it's, and when you hear prosperity, you're always hearing about you. You know, God in reference to you. It's God wants to do this so you can, and God wants you to be, and God wants to change the world through you. And when you hear about the sovereignty of God in its fullness, you realize, like, actually, I'm powerless, I'm useless. and I need God. And suddenly you're dependent on him again. And I actually really questioned if I really knew the gospel, to be honest, for a while. So I don't want to be in the kind of church that would teach anything approaching that. Obviously, I think there are degrees to it. I don't think every church that teaches that is necessarily bad.
Correct.
I think it's a dangerous idea. Some churches do it worse than others. But I chose to, if I'm going to get married one day and I'm going to have kids, what kind of church do I want them to grow up in? I want them to grow up in a church that teaches the gospel, that teaches the Bible sequentially, that goes through John chapter 1 this week, and next week you're going to hear John chapter 2, and next week you're going to hear John chapter 3. And some people say that's boring, and I'm like, well, that's your Bible. Like, why are you saved if you're going to be bored by your Bible then? Like, so I want to learn more about God and to be in awe of him,
So it's not like it's not like you turn back necessarily. It's not like you hit the reset button. You just kind of went through a reconfiguration regarding the way you're viewing things.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff was challenged, and I couldn't get the answers that I was looking for where I was, and so I said, okay, look, what you guys are doing, what you're doing, it's all great, it's fine. It's a very big part of my life, and that'll never change. It's a lot of who I am now, right? The whole performance thing, like where was I singing all these years? Where was I doing, performance? Where was I honing this craft of being able to stand in front of crowds and be convincing through words or through performance?
That was your 10,000 hours.
Basically, that's where it was, So I'll never
Malcolm
turn and
Gladwell.
look at them and say like, you're all like evil. But it's like, but for now, it's like
evil.
I didn't say that, but maybe for another day. But we'll.
No,
but yeah.
But I hear you because what I think has tended to happen globally, maybe more so in Africa, is that instead of work out your own salvation, instead of us digging the pages of the Bible or whichever text that we ascribe to, we listen to what's being said, and after months, years, centuries, whatever, it starts being mixed in with culture. It starts being mixed in with opinions and so on. And then by the time it's received by certain groups, we're receiving like a concoction of stuff that we just take as is, as opposed to questioning what really is going on. So, I mean, I've got like a bunch of examples. I'll stick to two quick ones. There's a friend of mutual friend in Zambia. His name's Pompey. He's a great musician, and he is doing music which is impacting the like East Africa and so on. Kind of rooted in gospel, but it's his worldview on certain issues. Now, we collaborated on a song with Pompey before he went full out gospel with Zubs. The song's called Flowers, Needles, Drum Beats, and it's one of those songs which shines the spotlight on like drugs and all that kind of. It's a decent song. It's not like there's anything funny about it.
It's a beautiful song.
Yeah,
That beat.
which Zaz brought to life, man. You should hear it, man. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
now I'm in.
No, check it out after
the.
the. And I saw on one of the forums a dude criticizing Pompey for mixing with non-gospel artists.
Oh yeah, that's
So so it's like the view of that guy is limited to who are you with on the track, as opposed to. I mean, I used to always say, like, if Christ, for example, there's that scene where he goes into a church and then he finds traders doing their thing, and he gets annoyed and he whips them and all that kind of stuff.
He whips them.
But
You're
He
turning
beats
the
them
place,
down
the
like-
house of
he
God,
beats
into a
them down
den
like
of
that.
thieves.
Right?
Like he
I
finds
don't
a
think he
stick.
said it
But what I'm
he beat them down.
okay,
I think he said he turned the tables around.
It said
well.
he picked up a stick though. Like there was.
Okay,
like,
regardless of
there
what he
was
did,
some-
let's
Yeah, I'm gonna go along
He
Musa
turned
says
up on
this.
that.
Let's take Zub's view. So he turned the tables down.
Okay.
My point is, after he turned the table down, if you gave him a mic there and said, Christ spit a verse, would it be hallelujah? Or would he like spit some common, like some socially aware stuff to try and,
because
So-
he's talking to those people.
Exactly.
that
So
he's
what I'm
just
saying is like
confronted, yeah.
there is expression that guys are blinded. I mean, they'll take the lens of that's not gospel music as we know it. That's not Ron Canoli. That's not whoever it is, and they'll judge it based on that, as opposed to what is the thinking? What is the root? What am I meant to be seeing in what's being said?
Yeah.
So that plays, I think, into the culture that we live in terms of the quote unquote Christian culture.
Yeah.
Because it's like a cult. It's like a club sometimes, or it feels like it's that, as opposed to it's a movement of people who look at Christ and say, what was he on? What was his let's decode him and be like him.
That's dope. Can you elaborate more, Musa, on just what Chilu is saying with regards to how it is perceived? So when you're heavily steeped in the church, like you were, your family is the church.
Yeah, basically.
Your daily interactions are with members of the church. This is your life, right?
Yeah.
And then when you sort of extricate yourself away from that, what was the perception like? What kind of comments did people make, or did you even check for those kind of things? What was that like for you?
I mean, look, I was even if I didn't want to check for them, I was going to hear them, right? I was one of the pastors. So,
of course.
I didn't just disappear into the night, unfortunately. I wish I could. But there were a few things. I mean, there were some people that were saying, hey, we'll stand by you, whatever you do. I think the noisiest bunch, unfortunately, was very negative. You're not using your gift for God. You're now mixing with the world. You are now, you're no longer walking under the anointing, that kind of thing. Certain phrases and which can be quite hard to deal with, especially when you've believed that for so long. This is the only way to do it. Just on what Chilu was saying, I believe for church singing, if there's a congregation, stick to gospel. I think if we're in the church on a Sunday and we're worshiping as believers, stick to gospel. But in terms of the expression beyond that, I think it's almost like anything's fair game. Right. And the church doesn't know that or doesn't like that yet, especially certain kinds of churches. So I really got a lot of negative feedback. I mean, even quite recently, I was kind of told, you're not using your gift for God. You're not going to be satisfied out there. You're like wasting your gift. And it's like, wow. Really? I've just made all this progress,
Yeah, I'm busy thinking.
And here I am. I'm like thanking God every day. Like, what? Yo, Lord, you've opened this door. Like 2 years ago, I would never have done any of this stuff. I mean, just sitting here, for me, it's like a big deal. It's like, wow, God is doing something awesome.
I'm not saying it is a big deal because it's Africans, but I mean, it's
y'all are a big deal to me, man. Y'all are a big deal to me.
It's a big deal from the point of view that you get to share seed. You get to speak to the bunch of people that listen to the podcast and maybe challenge their thinking. Yeah. I mean, I similarly, and you need to keep me in check, Zubs, because I mean, there's so many stories up in here.
No, go ahead. We love your stories, Chilu. More stories.
1997, right? I'm called to be MC at Miss Zambia, which is like a nationally televised thing. It's the hugest thing. They used to say it's the biggest crowd attendance thing other than football in Zambia at the time.
Wow. Yeah.
The previous year or the year before that, I couldn't even afford to be in the crowd. And then all of a sudden, my fortunes are turning, and I'm like, thank God. Yeah. I'm on stage. The show was a success. It was like a real big thing, right? Mm-hmm. I go back home, accolades. Next morning, I'm going to work, pep in my step, and then I meet a bishop who used to come to the radio station I worked at. I meet him in the streets in Osaka, and he looks at me and says, young man, I saw you on TV yesterday dancing. So oh yes, and I'm thinking the compliments coming, that's what's been
I'm thinking dancing. What do you say after that?
I think he must have dropped a dance move there where he was thinking, you're going to comment on that really intricate dance move I rocked.
He looks at me in the eye and says, you must be serious with your Christianity. Wow. And then he puts his hand in the streets in Lusaka, puts his hand on my head, starts praying for me.
My gosh.
and
demon must come out.
And he's gone, and I'm like, what? Shell-shocked. Shell-shocked.
Right there in the streets, you're being prayed for.
That's great.
Dude. And then, fast forward, he's just recently had a mad scandal which involves him, touching kids in the wrong place. But it just goes to show that sometimes it's a club, unfortunately. Because him doing that, in his mind, he's being God's lawyer. He's being the defender of the Almighty. But he's actually breaking down the confidence of a 21-year-old. I think I was 21 at the time.
Yeah, that's crazy.
As opposed to building, you actually maybe leaving a trail of destruction in your wake.
Yeah.
You know.
I think, the problem, especially with churches in Africa, is because we don't really know how to deal with stuff like that. With someone having this career outside of the church, especially in the creative field. What you will never hear in church is them telling their bankers to leave their bank.
No.
To work for You'll never hear that. You'll never hear, if he's a CEO of a bank, you'll never hear the pastor saying, "Why are you not serving the church?" You
always
must
the creative
be. You
stuff.
will never hear them say that. I'm like, wait, there's a disconnect.
There's a
right?
huge
There's a disconnect. Now, the creative side really does have a very real impact on people, and so yes, it must be taken seriously, and so I can understand it from that point of view. But in terms of managing the difference between, hey, I'm out there, I'm actually working just like everyone else is working.
Yeah.
This is my job. So I'm a singer. That's what I do, and that's how I put food on the table. So I'm gonna sing wherever I get work. Now your convictions can allow you or disallow you from certain jobs, but that's up to you.
That's on you.
It doesn't go beyond you though. And I think it would be so awesome if pastors in the situation like the one you just described and the one I kind of gave you, it's like, if they took that as an opportunity to be like, hey, talk to me about what happened. And so how are you handling being out there? And hey, let's mentor you so that while you're out there, you're covered and you're strong, you don't lose your faith. Because there's a lot of ways of losing the plot when when you're in the creative field. So it would be great to have that mentorship and that kind of belief from your leaders. It'll give you confidence. Yeah. And that would be awesome. But for the most part, they're just like, what are you doing out there? Yeah. What are you doing out there? And so they lose a lot of us creative guys to, quote unquote, the world, and then because we're not also trying to really study that hard, like the word and stuff, we tend to also go off on tangents, unfortunately. So we do need that covering. We do need, that support. It's just, man, they're just like the minute you're doing anything out there.
And we go all the way prodigal son with it, right? Because we're like,
Exactly.
you know what? If I'm not going to be covered by grace, then I might as well.
Then I
just
might
go
as well,
all out,
yeah.
When
Then it's-
when certain things they go against your core being. But now you're now rebelling.
Exactly.
And there's always that conflict between, I thought you said that sin was the problem, not sinners. So if I'm out there fraternizing with sinners, how is that the problem? Also, I thought you said it was about preaching the gospel of Christ, who's a savior. And if we're all saved, why are we all still hanging out with each other? Surely saving is part of the process or whatever. It's just everything points to a journey out in terms of physical and inward in terms of spiritual.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about the role of Christianity as we know it in Africa.
Yeah.
Because from where I come from, it's one of the most dominant religions, obviously. Do you think there is a way to seamlessly kind of subscribe to both the teachings of Christianity and the prescriptions of culture, for example, and tradition?
I think it's a very touchy question. One of the things that did happen as I was kind of making my decisions and stuff is I actually became quite serious about doctrine, So yeah, I believe you have to be very careful with what you mix, because Christianity should be Christianity. It should be defined by its own kind of, ideas and philosophies, and we get that from the Bible. I think the minute you try and mix that with something, you start to maybe go down the path of actually something that's not Christianity, but it looks Christian. And so that's a very dangerous walk, I believe. I think what's important is we have to understand that there are other ideas out there, and that we are always going to intersect with them, and we need to know how to interact with them without losing the core of Christianity. I think there is a way to do that, but it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of conversations, difficult conversations. Like you can hear some guys that come at you with these arguments about whether God exists or whether it's okay for me to live this kind of lifestyle. And you're coming with your idea from the Christian point of view, but that means nothing to them. It means nothing to them. So it's like, so how are you going to approach the subject? You're both on opposite ends of the spectrum, so you're actually never going to connect. because you're busy standing on your islands. I don't think you need to lose Christianity to be able to talk to someone that's not Christian, or to be able to live in this world with its different cultures and different ideals and philosophies.
Yeah.
I think you just need to be careful that you're not making Christianity into something else. That I think we need to be careful about. If you enjoy doing certain things and you have your lifestyle, that's great. But when you say you're a Christian, you mean something specific.
But what I also find is, when they say that a horse, when they want it to be focused, they put what do they call the blinders? Blinkers.
Yeah.
So they put blinkers. And I think that analogy maybe holds true in terms of the way sometimes Christians deal with other faiths, other cultures, because if you, I'm not sure how you feel about this, but if you kind of open yourself to try and understand the next guy and what he thinks and so on, it allows you to then engage from a mature place, a place of empathy and so on. But we sometimes, because of the blinkers, blinkers on, are caught up in Christianese.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're sitting on a table with somebody who is Jewish, who is Muslim, we fail to... We're kind of thrown off. We're like in a place where we kind of are like shell-shocked people. And I think personally, even though maybe I haven't done as much of it, I think we need to kind of school ourselves a bit more on what others believe, as opposed to just kind of, no, that's not the way.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think personally, I think everyone's wearing blinkers. And I actually don't believe it's only Christians. I think it's even people looking at Christians, because it's not like they're trying to understand us either, right? Because there's a lot of talk about Christianity nowadays, and a lot of like a negative talk specifically. And y'all ain't open-minded. Y'all aren't willing to have these conversations, and it's like, but you're not willing to have that conversation about my thing with me. Yeah. So I think we're all wearing blinkers, But the answer is definitely we need to be able to open ourselves up, at least to understand the next person. It doesn't mean you're now taking on what they believe. It's just, okay, I get where you're coming from, and so I have a way of talking about where I'm coming from in light of where you're coming from. I think
suppose that's because what might be happening as well is guys looking from the outside in are they're not seeing the distinctions. When they're thinking Christianity, then they're seeing a guy spraying doom on his congregation.
Oh yeah.
And then they're thinking, so that's what Christians think. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They look at guys like drinking petrol and all that kind of weird stuff, and it's all being mashed up. And I don't even know how one gets around like raising their hand and saying, no, that's not us. That's them. I don't know. It's a mess.
It is a mess. Look, I think we're gonna move away from Christianity now, and I'm sure at some point we'll revisit this conversation with you.
It's all good.
But I do agree that we need to talk some more about differing ideas, which is part of the reason why I personally am loving interacting with Jordan Peterson. Jordan B. Peterson is a guy I spoke to Musa about when I first met him, which is ironic because I've never spoken about Jordan Peterson with anyone else except maybe my friend T, But Jordan Peterson is a controversial guy right now, And he's not just controversial in the West and the US, he's controversial, it's becoming a global thing.
Yeah.
Because what he does is he challenges some of our perceptions and ideas that we've held as just true because they are just true. And we collectively uphold these things without questioning them. So he questions some of those things. And in a lot of cases, I think he's wrong, But in a lot of other cases too, he's absolutely right. But the resistance he meets with every time he challenges these ideas, people who don't want to engage at all, others who only want to engage at a certain level, and then others who are completely just like, unless you change your idea of how you think, then you and I can never talk again. And so I've been watching Jordan Peterson's path, and I know you've been watching it too.
Oh yeah, Jordan Peterson is someone I think I discovered last year, and I loved how he framed his arguments. And just like you've said, watching the way he interacts with different people. I've been watching a lot of his interviews, and this is why I believe everyone's got blinkers. It's not just a certain group of people, because even those who claim to have an open mind aren't willing to really listen to what he's saying, because when you hear people respond to him, you hear them responding in a way it's like, wait, he didn't say that though. You know, it's like they're fighting a person that's actually not sitting in front of them. They've come up with an idea of what he means because of what he said. One of the big issues that he became famous for was a bill in Canada that would basically impose a law that would force basically people to identify someone with a gender pronoun. You have to use the gender pronoun that they believe they should be identified by. And his problem is like, you can't force that though, right? You shouldn't be forcing that. And so people go, well, then you hate people who have different gender pronouns. It's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you shouldn't compel speech through a bill. That's never happened in the history of language, right? But if we're talking with each other and it becomes a natural thing where those conversations happen, that's fine and that's great. And in fact, if someone were to ask him to do that, he would do it, right? But he's just saying the government shouldn't get involved. And so other people will spin that and go, so you don't care about people with different pronouns. So that's not what he said. You think those people don't matter. That's not what he said, you know? So,
strawmanning. And I find that's the problem when we talk about things like differing perspective on religion and Christianity. Or when you try to have any kind of engagement, especially on a social level, on a communal level, with everybody involved, about core values, for example, or things that are to do with gender even, you know? And some things are not even that deep, you know? Some things are just as simple as, I don't know, I prefer Pusha T's new album to Kanye West's new album. Nah, you can't really be doing that because I can't believe you said Pusha T is a better rapper. It's like, no, I didn't say that. Whoa, I just said I prefer that. Whoa.
Yeah.
Aren't I allowed to feel what's going on?
Yeah. Battle against free speech.
And then before you know it, you know, it's them versus us. There's just a war going on.
There's a lot of that at the moment.
There is so much of that going on.
There is.
All right, you and I will have a Jordan Peterson conversation more because we can't just scrape the surface with Jordan Peterson.
Go back started on something there.
You should find out more about.
I'm gonna Google him. I'm thinking Michael B. Jordan.
Michael B. Jordan.
I'm on this.
Let me tell you.
Forever.
Michael B. Jordan is on planet Uranus, and Jordan B. Peterson is probably on Mercury. Closer to the sun, you know? But anyway,
it's hot out there.
Yeah, and I mean, they couldn't be more worlds apart. They're the same galaxy, but it's hot out there. Where this guy is.
I'm gonna Google the man.
Okay, so let's segue through from that. Let us know about your journey with Jordan.
Yeah,
we'll have a great conversation. You even bought the book, right? 12 Rules?
I bought the book, I bought it on Amazon and I'm reading it currently,
Apparently it's one of the bestsellers in South Africa too right now.
Is it?
Apparently.
Wow, I didn't
Did you
look
guys
that
get a
up.
check
That's
from this dude?
Listen, this guy is actually quite compelling.
Okay, no, I'm on it.
He structures himself very well, and that's what I like. It's very few people take the time to actually really structure their ideas.
Yeah.
And he's not just convincing, it's like the logic is there.
But he's windy and he waffles and he can be quite a bigot sometimes. But hey, that's where you and I differ, though.
We disagree.
That's where you and I differ. Okay,
we'll have that conversation.
We'll have that conversation. I want to talk about another discipline. You remember when we talked about your taekwondo and about you have a unique ability to respond as life guides you in different places. You do it with courage. You do it with conviction. Yeah. There's a sense of self-belief there, you know, and there's a sense of confidence there, you know. I want to go back to what I asked you earlier on what does it cost you and what have you had to give up in order to get that? Because I know a lot of people struggle with trying to do several things at the same time. I mean, Chilu's just started running with a radio summit in Lusaka in Zambia. A beautiful summit that he's put together, but he has had to wear like the organizer jacket, the CEO jacket, you know, the buck stops with me jacket, which is obviously not something he was born with, you know, and it's a far cry from a voice artist, but you have to be able to juggle different roles in life. How do you manage to do it so well?
And you mentioned Taekwondo. Taekwondo gave me something that I think I didn't have before. When you go through any kind of process that gives you an opportunity to grow and change. Now in Taekwondo, it appears mostly physical. You know, you start, you're not flexible, you can't kick to save your life. You realize there's actually 3 or 4 stages to a proper kick, and you're like, oh, I didn't know that, you know, type thing. Yeah. And you learn them one at a time, and you're grinding for months to get like these basic kicks right and stuff like that. and then you can do them, and then you can do more, and then you can do more, and you're going up with the belt system, and you're learning about the hierarchies in Taekwondo. It's like it's very traditional, a lot of protocol and that kind of thing. Yeah. Watching my own body just go through those changes, it's like if I can go from not being able to kick to save my life, to being able to jump and kick 2 boards that are like 1.5 meters apart, in one kick. If I can do that, like what else can I do?
I'll tell you what
what
can't
else can
be
I
is messed with.
No, yeah, you can't be messed with. It gave me a confidence to actually explore. Taekwondo is something I started as a sport. I want to do a martial art. Who didn't want to do a martial art?
We all wanted to be Jackie Chan.
You know what I mean?
We all wanted to be Bruce Lee.
So yeah, that's where it started.
Shokosugi. Do you remember Shokosugi?
I remember that guy.
The ninja dude. Yeah.
Yeah. So going through that whole process and learning what it means to actually have a skill that's dangerous. Yeah. And so you need to carry yourself a certain way, and you need to be treated a certain way because you can respond a certain way to bad treatment now.
How does your girlfriend
so you're a
feel about
weapon.
that? How does your girlfriend
pretty
feel
much,
about that?
my girlfriend's very happy about it because she knows she's very well protected, and you don't learn a martial art properly without becoming less violent. Fantastic. People think you become more violent, you become less violent because you actually learn self-respect, and it's like, wait, I actually could hurt people, so I'm not going to just go around willy-nilly and do stuff. But if someone's in trouble or if I'm in trouble, I know I can defend myself or I can protect people. Beautiful. And it connected with what I was doing with church. A lot of the reason I had a lot of these back and forths and ended up making these decisions is I had beliefs that I felt like, no, we should be doing it this way, or I'm seeing something, I want to stand for something. And it comes at a price. It really does, Working hard comes at a price. You're going through physical pain of learning a skill, but you realize, just like with you taking on this new role of the CEO, it's like, well, either you do it or you don't. Either you do it or you don't. Like the opportunity's there. You want to achieve this, it's going to cost you this much. So are you going to pay the price? Because if you're not going to pay the price, then you have no business being there.
So
that's it.
My daughter is also doing karate at school, funnily enough.
Yeah.
But have you been in a fight where you've had to use your skill?
Yes, I have.
Really?
I have twice.
I see no scars, so I guess we can safely assume.
No. I mean, obviously in Taekwondo, you learn to spar, and there's the sport of sparring. And in that, I did a competition, and my arm was broken in my first competition. Oh, wow. That was fun. But I...
So there's a break a leg, you...
Someone had to go there. It was just waiting for you, and you went and you grabbed it.
Chilu will always go there. Chilu can't leave it there. He will see it hanging, and he'll be like,
"Daddy joke,
low hanging fruit." It's like,
I need
to take it now.
Give me that bite that fruit.
Leave it alone.
No, the story.
Yeah, but yeah, I've had to fight twice, and both times someone was trying to mug me. Well, actually, the one time someone was trying to mug me, the other time someone was just being silly.
But you didn't initiate.
No,
because
I'll never initiate a fight.
But wait, look, so this is I find this fascinating.
Yeah.
Obviously, this was after your pasta stuff, right?
The one was kind of during.
A lot of guys think like,
well,
if you're a
pasta, bro,
and somebody comes at you because you're a pastor, it's, son, go well, go your own way. Let's not.
Here's the other cheek.
Yeah. No,
so it was during.
One of the times was during, but the fact of the matter is like if I'm killed, I can't do anything ever again. Like that's it, it's done. Yeah. And so if my life is being threatened, either I protect my life or I lose it. Like that was the choice I was facing in that moment. It's like someone's got a weapon.
So it wasn't just somebody irritating you like
I'm not just being nagged and like, hey, you're an idiot, and it's like shut your mouth, papa, and then like that's not what was happening, And so I literally had to protect my life. And once the person came at me, it was like, well, they don't have a gun. If it's a gun, like you don't even bother. Like you don't beat bullets.
Yeah.
You know?
It's not the Matrix.
Unless you're the one. Yeah,
Unless you're the one. Like, unless you're the one. And I'm not the one. I'm probably like the 7, but not the one. So
the 3 for third.
So yeah, but yeah, I had to protect myself in that situation. I think it's definitely a valid position to take if you're being threatened and you can protect yourself. Sometimes, like I said, if there's a gun or if there's a lot of people and you literally can't do anything, you can't do anything. But if you can, then do it. Because this is a choice you face in many more ways than just a physical way. Right? It's like if your whole life is being challenged by some kind of ordeal, it's like, are you gonna rise up to the challenge and face it, or are you gonna let it override everything? Because it has far-reaching consequences. Yeah. And if I was like cut, or if I was, cut a certain way and I bled out because it was empty, there was no one that was gonna find me there.
You wouldn't
I wouldn't be here, or the quality of my life would be vastly different. And then you're dependent on other people for a long time. And I'm in South Africa. I don't have a lot of family here. It's like there's so many things that go through your mind in that moment. Yeah. It's like it's fight or die, fight or lose the opportunity to do a bunch of things. So I chose to fight, and yeah, I'm here. So clearly, I'm okay.
You opening your mouth like you're gonna say something.
No. I'm amused because I remember when I was a kid.
Oh, here we go again.
The stories.
Last one. No, because I was a kid, and I remember my mom telling me the story of a guy who went in front, because during the church services they used to have a testimony period where you go up front and say, God's been good to me this week because ABCD. Church goes, amen, they clap.
Yeah.
And this guy went up and he spoke about how he beat up some dude that, and so he didn't get the claps and the amens because it was a no-no for a guy who professes to be Christian or whatever to get in a tussle to fight. So I've just never thought about it until you came. Black belt pastor.
Yeah. The black belt pastor. That could be a brand. It's
exactly, man.
If you can't cast out the demons, you kick them out.
Yeah, dude, we can make figurines.
Have some demons?
Hey.
Call the black belt pastor.
No doom required.
Before we go into rapid fire, I'll tell you what that is just now. Before we go into that, you touched on something very lightly, and I'm just going to touch on it very briefly. We could go in on another 2 hours on it, but I won't. You said being out here and not having family around you. How have you found that experience as someone living in the diaspora, somebody who's a traveler like a lot of us are?
Yeah. It's definitely had its perks. I mean, just economically, it's, South Africa is a lot more stable than where I was in Zim. But being a foreigner already kind of puts you in a different tier of people. I was just in Pick and Pay the other day, and one of the ladies was like, "Oh, do you want to open a Pick and Pay account?" I was like, "They're doing accounts now at Pick and Pay. That's awesome." And so she's like, "I need your ID number. I have a passport." She's like, "Oh, sorry." Stuff like that. So certain things are not available to you that you would really like to have, and you have to go through a few more hoops than other people to get things done.
But on a human being level, you say if I get attacked in this dark alley, I don't even have family around that will look for me.
It's definitely got its impact in terms of the loneliness aspect. I have some distant family, but no one I'm talking to, or maybe one person I'm talking to a lot. But other than that, it's that's it. You really have to fight to make your way here. And it's definitely something you have to take on quite seriously for the first bunch of years, and especially when I was a pastor, everything was kind of just happening, and I didn't think of that too much because I had something going on, and now suddenly I had to face the big wide world, and it's whoa, this is really difficult. It's really difficult. It would be so much easier if I was home, where the mom's there and family is there. If things don't work out, there's the house where you're always going to stay and that kind of thing. and you've got people that'll always be like, no, I know somebody, let me talk to somebody for you. And here it's not like that for a while. You might get that eventually, but it's difficult. And also, anytime you do anything, you're not just doing your own thing, you're representing your people as well.
Yeah,
right?
man.
Whether you know it or not.
Yes, indeed. The responsibility is heavy in that regard.
Quite a big responsibility in that regard, and it's been difficult, but eventually I've started enjoying it because it's like, well, again, it's that same outlook. It's like, if this is what it costs to do the thing, are you going to pay it? Are you going to pay the price? Like, I have to be here, I have to do it here. I can't do what I'm doing in Zim. In Zim, the infrastructure won't work there. I can't just decide to go home and do what I'm doing now over there. So I've had to pay that price. It's not an easy journey, especially like when you encounter xenophobia. I'll tell you a quick story. One time I was on a taxi from Pretoria to Randburg, and
now you have to, because the guys who watch Key Africans Unlocked are all over the place. When you say taxi in South Africa, everyone knows what you mean.
Okay, great.
When
great.
a Zambian viewer will think you're talking about a taxi cab.
Yeah, so like a minibus, like these minibuses, they'll have like 20 people in them, even though they seat maybe 14. Very common.
Thanks for that
feature,
clarification.
type thing.
Good looking out.
Yeah, good looking out, bro. So they call taxis here, and this is a semi-long distance. It's not very long distance, maybe like almost an hour of a trip. And between Pretoria and the destination, you go through this area called Diepsloot, right? And it's kind of like a shanty town, or at least it's been known for that. It's right next to a very Lani place called Dainfern. So it's kind of juxtaposition. And in that time, there was a lot of xenophobia. So a lot of South Africans expressing anger at those that were not from South Africa being in their spaces. They're taking our jobs, they're doing this. It's actually a conversation going on all over the world, it's nationalists, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a valid conversation to have.
So now I'm on this taxi and you're there with a bunch of people, and right up on the road, across the road runs this person, and then a mob is following them. Oh, flip. Right? And I'm just like, what did that guy do? And on the taxi, everyone is like, yes, you must get them, get those foreigners. There was a slang word they use, kwere kwere ma kwere kwere. Get them, yeah, they must go, yeah, and they're all like,
I'm sure you can
in the
hella
taxi.
Quiet at that point.
Like, oh man, I had my earphones and everything, bro. Like, you're sitting there and you're like, wow, if I open my mouth and say anything,
you might not make it to the destination.
I might not make it to
You might have to use
Randburg,
your taekwondo.
It's like, and I didn't do taekwondo back then, but and that's even worse. So I was even more scared.
Yeah, you wouldn't have been able to use it. I'll tell you that.
But you encounter something like that, and you realize, like, wow, it can actually be dangerous for you to do this as a foreigner. And back then, I used to do a lot of singing the national anthem, funny enough, as a Zimbabwean, singing the South African national anthem at a place called Emperor's Palace. It's a very big, like, casino type place. It's also got these sporting events, so that they do boxing and tennis. And I would sing the national anthem for these events. And they wouldn't put my full name in the newspapers because they didn't want people to realize that I'm not local. So my full name is Musanete, but they would just use Musa because Musa is a name you can find in South Africa. So Musa is going to be singing the national anthem at this thing, and not Musanete, because they could actually potentially face backlash for hiring a foreigner, especially to sing the national anthem. Like, I can kind of understand that, but you have all these extra barriers. And
it's a lot. I mean, there's so
with.
much to take on board. And not to mention what it's done for the fabric of family across the continent, what it's done for the people in general in terms of what it's forced us to take on in terms of identity, But like I said, that's a whole podcast worth of conversations that we could be having.
So this has basically been like a bunch of intros.
This is just an introduction to Musanete, so everybody knows this guy exists and they know what kind of guy he is, how dope he is. They haven't heard you. Can they hear you singing online? Like, do you have a recording somewhere?
I'm in an album with Charles Duplessis called The Gershwin Songbook.
Beautiful.
You can find that on iTunes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
So
Other than that, just check the listings for the theatrical performances. Are you on Twitter, Insta?
I'm on Twitter, Instagram. You can just search Musanete. That's Musanete.
Yeah.
on both Twitter and Instagram. You can find me on Facebook, Musanete Sakupwanya.
Great.
Yeah.
We didn't even talk about your podcast.
No, we didn't. You see, I was
Journey
a
to
good boy.
Podcast.
I
You
didn't.
mentioned
I
it.
didn't
You
plug.
mentioned it, and you plugged it right at the
Yeah,
beginning.
man. So
But that
so
was
you're
all.
gonna have some traffic coming your way.
No. You definitely are gonna have a few people coming through to check you out. So, Journey to Podcast.
Yeah, you can find it at journeytopodcast.com. Yeah, it's a podcast about podcasting. So it's basically teaching you how to get into podcasting, what you need to look out for, what my experiences have been, a few like motivational things as well, because it's all about learning something new. And as you guys know, that's my whole thing, right? I will watch YouTube videos on anything that I want to learn about, and then I will go and do it. So
YouTube is the new varsity, bro.
Hey, man.
YouTube is the new varsity. All right,
That
we're
is
going to get
true.
into rapid fire before we
Rapid
wrap
fire.
it up.
Okay, great.
Rapid fire is basically me asking you a bunch of questions, around about 5, maybe 6. It might just be one word in which you tell me what comes to your mind when I say it. It might be a choice of options between like something and another. You choose. Or it might just be a sentence to finish. Whatever it is, it's on you. There's no right or wrong answers.
I hope
It's
so.
rapid fire because you don't take a lot of time to go through it.
Yeah, that's
So
cool.
don't overthink.
Yeah.
Say
All right.
whatever the first thing that comes to your
So
mind is,
counter to
say
me.
it.
I
Even if it's a
overthink.
swear
2
word,
seconds, bruh.
you know what I mean? You're the pastor with the taekwondo. No one will come for you.
Yo, bruh.
All right, let's jump right in.
All right, let's go.
Talent or discipline?
Discipline.
Nice. Stage or television?
Stage.
That's interesting because people are now starting to watch all this stuff online. So
They are, but I like
nothing
the-
like real life experience of
Yeah.
stage.
I prefer it.
Yeah, TV's out, man. Let's be real.
I mean, hey, Netflix for days.
Is that television though?
Isn't it? A form of?
Streaming TV.
It's
I
becoming TV, I guess. We'll see.
physical. I'm turning your rapid fire into
Yeah,
like
you are. Like, I'm
turtle
watching
fire.
this.
Oh, Toto is pop. Toto
We
is
get
fire.
along too well. That's the problem. Like, it's
Right,
it's like, yeah.
right. That's all bad. That's all bad.
Stick to the format, bruh.
Physical strength or mental prowess. I think I already know what you're gonna choose here.
Mental prowess.
Okay.
I would actually try and go for a combination of both, but it was either or. So, mental prowess.
Hip hop or R&B.
R&B.
Okay, now the last one, you're gonna have to finish it off.
Oh gosh, here we
I'll
go.
even give you a half a second to think about it.
Oh man, here we go.
Home is
Great food.
Musanete.
No, that's dope.
Yeah, listen, nothing tastes like home, hey? There is no taste like home. Seriously.
Man, that was probably. I'm gonna listen to this and go like, dude, bruh, like you could have handled that so much better.
No, great food. You said great food?
Yep, I
Can I
did.
tell you, there's nothing that will remind you of home more than things
No,
like
you're right.
taste.
Definitely.
So it's not just a coincidence that it popped up in your mind.
No.
Because you miss the taste of home.
Yeah.
You can try and make your own, for example, sadza nemuriwo, nshima. You can try and make your
Yeah.
own pap when you're living out in Switzerland.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't quite
No, it never
taste
does.
like Lusaka or Harare or Joburg or so. It just never quite tastes like home,
So I like the way he made my answer so deep. I'm really happy. That's great.
No, man. That's what he does. That's what he does. No, it was deep. It was deep when you said it.
Yeah.
People are fooled into thinking home is about a physical space or building or geographical location. Nah, it's things like taste, food, things like smell, experiences. That's what makes you at home or feel at home,
If we ever used to play out with tracks, which we don't, that would be a good segue for your track, the Save Your Space, because there's no place like home.
Right. Yeah. I like that you've been listening to my music. Makes me feel
Word
it's
for
very
word, my
affirming.
bruh.
I'm so affirmed right now, Chile. I'm so valid.
it's so nice.
And that album came out in 2008 or something.
Yeah, somewhere there,
That's
man. Yeah.
validation. Thank you, bro.
Yeah, no, thank you.
The way I respect
Yeah.
this guy, that he listens to my music is like, okay, thanks, my
I
guy.
can see like you're
Viva.
smiling differently
this
now.
is real. Tip and trick. Next time I see you, quote a line, and you're gonna be right here. You're gonna be right now. You're here. You're gonna be right here,
Breakfast gonna be on the last letter if you.
Oh my goodness.
bro. Thank you so much for joining us on Key Africans.
Hey, man,
I
I'm
look
so glad
forward
I
to
got
all
through,
our
yeah.
other conversations. You also were a relationship pastor, right?
Well, I mean,
That was your
I
thing.
don't know if you can say relationship pastor,
Well,
but I was good.
You were like
at,
a counselor. Yeah,
I was good with that.
We
kind
didn't
of
even
thing, yeah.
jump in on that.
Nah.
We might make that our own African pod
Yeah.
series.
Yeah,
or
man.
something. That
Cool,
might be
That would be dope.
That's
like get
cool.
advice from. Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah. It's all good.
Thank you for finally doing this, bro. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. I'm really glad we finally got to get it done. This has been a really good experience.
good
for
to
me. I
meet
really
you, man.
enjoyed it.
Thanks, Chilu.
Yeah, it's been real.
God bless, guys.
Awesome.
We done.
Done, son.
Rapid fire off the mic. King James or the Message Bible?